Nick Rathod is Executive Director of the State Innovation Exchange. Prior to leading the exchange, Mr. Rathod directed state campaigns for Mayor Michael Bloomberg's Every Town for Gun Safety. He also served as the Consumer and Financial Protection Bureau's Assistant Director of Intergovernmental and International Affairs. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Nick Rathod, and it's an honor to speak to you about an issue I care deeply about, protecting and expanding our democracy. Many factors led my parents to immigrate from India and settle in rural Nebraska. Economic opportunity, an opening at a Methodist church where my father served for over 40 years, and the chance for a better life for their children. It was also the promise of experiencing American democracy, the idea that every citizen has a vote in the fate of their community, and a political system in which all voices are heard, and elected leaders listen and respond. That noble right, the right to vote, is the bedrock of America, and is something that as a party we should strive to protect. It is fundamental to who we are as Americans. Unfortunately, there are forces within our country working to undermine this core value. Sadly, if my parents were becoming citizens today, it would be hard for them to register and vote in many states. In fact, since 2002, states have introduced hundreds of bills making it more difficult for ordinary citizens to participate in the political process. These efforts were massively accelerated in the election of 2010, which brought conservatives to power in many states. From 2011 to 2015, state legislatures introduced nearly 400 new voting restrictions in 49 states. Last year, Alabama, the birthplace of the Voting Rights Act, passed a strict voter ID law and then closed 31 DMV offices across the state, primarily in areas that disproportionately affect communities of color. In North Carolina, as Reverend Barber referenced, conservative legislators passed laws curbing early voting, cutting same-day registration, eliminating pre-registration, expanding challenges at polling places, and imposed a strict voter ID law that, pending legislation, will be implemented in 2016. Overall, this November, 17 states will have new voting restrictions in place for the first time in a presidential election. Now, why is this happening? How is this possible? I would argue that the Democratic Party has ignored the states for too long. Meanwhile, conservatives have invested ruthlessly at the business and movement building at the state level. They've built up an infrastructure that allows them to drive policies like Stand Your Ground from Florida to 20-some states. They've built up a farm team that allows them to train and recruit conservatives for office. They now control more legislative chambers since the 1920s, and they have 31 Republicans in the governorships across the states. As the executive director of the State Innovation Exchange, a group that works on state policy and is now building a counteroffensive to fight groups like the American Legislative Exchange Council and other conservative forces in the states, I have had a front row seat to how these corrosive and anti-democratic policies impact lives of people. But I've also seen how states can also be models for positive change. The past several years, we have seen significant increases in election modernization policies throughout the country, driven by progressives in the states. Spurred by new technology and new ideas, policies like online voter registration, same-day registration, automatic voter registration have passed in a number of states. These are common sense, good government policies which often save taxpayers money and have therefore passed with strong bipartisan majorities in the states. Along with removing barriers to registration and voting, states have passed a number of other reforms which expand the electorate, increase participation, and protect the fundamental right to vote. This includes restoring the right to vote to nearly 6 million Americans living in our communities who have paid their dues and been released by the justice system, but who are denied a voice in our democracy because of prior felony conviction. Across the country, states have demonstrated the ways in which we can impoverish democracy when we create barriers to the ballot box, but have also shown how modernizing our systems and increasing voter access can enrich it. I strongly urge this committee to look to the states and commit to a platform that focuses on the states and works to undo voting restrictions wherever they find them, to promote reforms that increase voter access and participation, and to realizing the democratic promise on which this great country was founded and my parents were inspired by. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Nick. We've heard from several witnesses this morning, very eloquent, who are laboring in the vineyards of state politics. Now, these are the last four Democratic Party platforms. I happen to have read them all lately. They don't talk about state politics. It's not in here. So what is the case for us, we who are writing the 2016 Democratic Party platform, or at least drafting it, to add in what's the case for us changing what has been done before? We're a national committee of the Democratic National Committee. Why is it that there's a case for us to be talking about state level politics?
Well, every reform, every policy that Democrats care about may run through the federal government, but also runs through the states. They're intertwined. That's what federalism is. And if you look at what happens when federal policies are passed, the states have been able to block many of the things that we care about. If you look at Medicaid expansion, 19 states have left 10 million Americans uninsured. These have human consequences. Anti-union policies are making it tougher for working families to share in the economic recovery. Austerity measures in state budgets are letting vital infrastructure rust up. We just heard about Flint earlier. That's the type of thing that leaving the states out causes. And in fact, in Orlando, if gun policies would have been stronger there, that could have been prevented. And so if you leave the states out, if you ignore the states, you're also ignoring the human consequences that neglect causes. So I would strongly encourage the party and this committee to integrate state policies and focus on states into the platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. We appreciate you.